Opportunities that come to those who have saved money. A few years ago, a young man came to Philadelphia from the farming district of Pennsylvania and went to work in a printing plant. One of his fellow workmen owned some shares in a building and loan company and had formed the habit of saving $5 a week through this association. This young man was influenced by his associate to open an account with the building and loan company. At the end of 3 years, he had saved $900. The printing plant for which he worked got into financial difficulty and was about to fail. He came to the rescue with his $900, which he had saved in small amounts, and in return was given a half interest in the business. By inaugurating a system of close economy, he helped the business to pay off its indebtedness, and today he is drawing out of it, as his half of the profits, a little better than $25,000 a year. This opportunity never would have come, or, if it had, he would not have been prepared to embrace it had he not formed the habit of saving money. When the Ford automobile was perfected, during the early days of its existence, Henry Ford needed capital to promote the manufacture and sale of his product. He turned to a few friends who had saved up a few $1,000s, one of whom was Senator Couzens. These friends came to his rescue, put in a few $1,000s with him, and later drew out millions of dollars in profits. When Woolworth first started his 5 and 10-cent store plan, he had no capital, but he turned to a few friends who had saved, by the closest sort of economy and great sacrifice, a few $1,000s. These friends staked him, and later they were paid back hundreds of thousands of dollars in profits. Van Heusen, of soft collar fame, conceived the idea of producing a semi-soft collar for men. His idea was sound, but he had not a cent to promote it. He turned to a few friends who had only a few $100s, who gave him a start, and the collar made each of them wealthy. The men who started the El Producto cigar business had but little capital, and what they did have was money they had saved from their small earnings as cigar makers. They had a good idea, and knew how to make a good cigar, but the idea would have died a bornin had they not saved a little money. With their meager savings, they launched the cigar, and a few years later they sold out their business to the American Tobacco Company for $8 million. Back of practically every great fortune one may find, as its beginning, a well-developed habit of saving money. John D. Rockefeller was an ordinary bookkeeper. He conceived the idea of developing the oil business, which was then not even considered a business. He needed capital, and because he had developed the habit of saving, and had thereby proved that he could conserve the funds of other people, he had no difficulty in borrowing what money he needed. It may be truthfully stated that the real basis of the Rockefeller fortune is the habit of saving money which Mr. Rockefeller developed while working as a bookkeeper at a salary of $40 a month. James J. Hill was a poor young man, working as a telegrapher at a salary of $30 a month. He conceived the idea of the Great Northern Railway system, but his idea was out of proportion to his ability to finance. However, he had formed the habit of saving money, and on the meager salary of $30 a month had saved enough to enable him to pay his expenses on a trip to Chicago, where he interested capitalists in financing his plan. The fact that he, himself, had saved money on a small salary was considered good evidence that he would be a safe man to trust with other people's money. Most businessmen will not trust another man with their money unless he has demonstrated his ability to take care of his own and use it wisely. The test, while it is often embarrassing to those who have not formed the habit of saving, is a very practical one. A young man who worked in a printing plant in the city of Chicago wanted to open a small print shop and go into business for himself. He went to a printing supply house manager and made known his wants, saying he desired credit for a printing press and some type and other small equipment. The first question asked by the manager was, "Have you saved any money of your own?" He had. Out of a salary of $30 a week, he had saved $15 a week regularly for nearly 4 years. He got the credit he wanted. Later on, he got more credit. Until today, he has built up one of the most successful printing plants in the city of Chicago. His name is George B. Williams, and he is well known, as are also the facts here stated, to the author of this course. Many years after this incident, The author of this course became acquainted with Mr. Williams, and at the end of the war, in 1918, the author went to Mr. Williams and asked for credit amounting to many thousands of dollars. For the J.P. Morgan once said he would rather loan $1 million to a man of sound character, who had formed the habit of saving money, than he would $1,000 to a man without character, who was a spendthrift. Generally speaking, this is the attitude which the world takes toward all men who save money. It often happens that a small savings account of no more than $200 or $300 is sufficient to start one on the highway to financial independence. A few years ago, a young inventor invented a household article which was unique and practical. He was handicapped, as inventors so often are, because he did not have the money to market his invention. Moreover, not having formed the savings habit, he found it impossible to borrow money through banking sources. His roommate was a young machinist who had saved $200. He came to the inventor's aid with this small sum of money and had enough of the articles manufactured to give them a start. They went out and sold, from house to house, the first supply, then came back and had another supply made up, and so on, until they had accumulated, thanks to the thrift and savings ability of the roommate, a capital of $1,000. With this, plus some credit they secured, they bought the tools for manufacturing their own product. The young machinist sold his half-interest in the business 6 years later for $250,000. He never would have handled this much money during his entire life had he not formed the habit of saving, which enabled him to come to the rescue of his inventor friend. This case might be multiplied 1,000 times, with but slight variation as to details, as it is fairly descriptive of the beginning of many great fortunes that have been made and are now in the making in the United States. It may seem like a sad, cruel fact, but it is a fact nonetheless that if you have no money and have not developed the habit of saving, you are out of luck as far as availing yourself of the opportunity to make money is concerned. It can do no harm to repeat. In fact, it should be repeated over and over again that the real start of nearly all fortunes, whether great or small, is the formation of the habit of saving money. Get this basic principle firmly founded in your mind, and you will be well on the road toward financial independence. It is a sad sight to see a man, well along in years, who has sentenced himself to the wearisome treadmill of hard labor all the days of his life because he has neglected forming the habit of saving money. Yet there are millions of such men living in the United States alone today. The greatest thing in life is freedom. There can be no real freedom without a reasonable degree of financial independence. It is a terrible thing to be compelled to be at a certain place, at a certain task, perhaps a task which one does not like, for a certain number of hours every working day of the week, for a whole lifetime. In some ways, this is the same as being in prison, since one's choice of action is always limited. It is really no better than being in prison with the privilege of a trustee, and in some ways it is even worse because the man who is imprisoned has escaped the responsibility of providing a place to sleep, something to eat, and clothes to wear. The only hope of escape from this lifelong toil which curtails freedom is to form the habit of saving money, and then live up to that habit, no matter how much sacrifice it may require. There is no other way out for millions of people, and unless you are one of the rare exceptions, this lesson and all these statements of fact are meant for you and apply to you. Neither a borrower nor a lender be. For loan oft loses both itself and friend, and borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow, as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. Shakespeare.